Welcome back, all. Today we're going to go ahead and begin the prep work to actually create a wireless access point, an open wireless access point, which can be identical to any other wireless access point in a sense. It can have the same name and it can have the same MAC address. So you will be able to, for example, kick other devices from that real network, jam the real network, and then have them automatically reconnect back to you. But that is a side benefit to all of this. When you create your own wireless access point, an open one, this is especially dangerous for public places where people connect to open Wi-Fi without thinking twice and start connecting to their services online, uh, payment gateways, social media, etc. This is where this becomes a really serious problem. Now, what abilities do we have as the owners of that wireless access point, as the person who's controlling that rogue wireless access point? Well, first of all, you control the DNS queries. So you can you can control how the DNS queries are resolved. For example, you can have the domain that is resolved to your local IP address on which you have your own web server running, and where you can clone pretty much any site out there and then serve that fake site which looks exactly like the original pretty much. And once you serve it, they can log in, and it doesn't need to be HTTPS, or in some cases it has to be HTTPS due to the new standards in browsers. And in the case that it's not HTTPS, great. You can harvest the credentials simply by using Wireshark. In case that it is HTTPS, you will need to basically serve your own certificate, SSL certificate. And keep in mind that once you serve your own SSL certificate, the person on the other side needs to sign it. So they need to, you know that site where it says, connection not secure, something like that. You have to click on accept certificate, and once you click on accept certificate, you can actually enter. They have to click on it because they can't actually access the site otherwise, because all of their queries are being resolved through you and you are resolving them to your local IP. So unless somebody starts digging, they will actually have to sign it and access the site. So once they sign the certificate, basically you own their traffic, because you can then pretty much decrypt the incoming traffic without any problems of whatsoever. Well, relatively without any problems of whatsoever. In addition to that, you can monitor everybody's DNS queries. You can monitor what everybody's doing online. A lot of things. Possibilities are numerous. You can even use the SSL strip in order to attempt to strip the encryption from the connections, but SSL strip doesn't always work. There are also some variants of SSL attacks as well that we might delve into. Now, the very first thing that we should do, all that I'm about to create a virtual environment and perform all of this within a virtual environment. Now, you can actually do this on your host system. Not a big deal. The procedure is pretty much the same. However, really wouldn't recommend it. You will be running a download of services on that machine. You will have web server, you will have a DNS server, you will have certain programs which will be listening on certain ports. So you will have a lot of open ports, you will have a lot of services that are running in addition to the wireless access point that is actually running there. So that machine will be completely open to outside traffic. To do this on your machine that you use on daily basis or something like that, I don't think that's a good idea. I really don't. If you want to, yeah, that's up to you completely, but I really don't think that's a good idea. Anyway, I have a wireless USB adapter, USB, keep in mind, wireless USB adapter, which I'm going to use for the creation of the wireless access point. I need the USB wireless adapter in order for this to actually work. Otherwise, I can't actually pass, otherwise the virtual machine won't have wireless connection access. So you need that. And you need a compatible one. So the one that you need must be capable of being an access point. It needs to be compatible with Linux, and that should be it. So those two requirements, plus it needs to be capable of monitor mode. So those three requirements, once you meet them, you should be good. If you are looking for recommendations, you can go onto a ton load of forums out there onto Linux questions. I don't know, like have them on the Kali forums, Buffer Overflow, Stack Exchange. Like you have it everywhere. Like you can really just type in wireless USB wireless adapters for Evil Twin compatible chipsets, and you will find a good amount of results. People will have lists and lists and lists of compatible chipsets. I do believe that I have shown this before. Anyway, so first thing that we need to do is have a root terminal. So type in dnf install at virtualization. So this is going to install pretty much everything that is needed for virtualization. We're going to create our own sandboxed machine. If it gets infected or if it gets trashed or if something happens to it, we really don't care because it's just a virtual machine. We don't have any of our personal files there. So who cares? It's completely irrelevant. Anyway, now what we need to do is basically, once this is done, let's just go ahead and confirm dnf install virt manager. Okay, so that's installed as well, nothing to do. I'm not going to be using VirtualBox or VMware or anything like that, even though they're compatible with Linux and you can install those things on Linux. But generally, virtualization on Linux for Fedora anyway is done via KVM and Zen, but I really don't like Zen. I don't know why. I don't have any reason not to like it, really. I just use KVM. I've always used KVM pretty much. So yeah, KVM is a really serious way of virtualizing environments, really secure, safe, very professional. It's far, far, far above the VirtualBox level. So you can pass GPUs here, devices, mess around on end with the VMs. You have an entire command line for it as well, in addition to the GUI interface. And it has all that we need. Now, my USB wireless adapter is plugged into the machine. So it's plugged in. You will need to start the Virt manager. Let me just go ahead and get enforce permissive. Okay, set enforce to 1. Yours will be on 1 by default. I've set this to permissive to troubleshoot some things. You have SC Linux, which is mandatory access controls. You cannot disable them during runtime. You have to reset the machine to disable them. But it does have 2 modes. It has permissive and enforcing. Permissive will allow everything to happen, but it will inform you if something illegal is going on the machine. However, enforcing will actually prevent the illegal actions as well. But you cannot shut it off during runtime at all. Okay, now that that is done, type in virt manager. And I already have a lot of virtual machines installed here, and they're all configured for a different purpose. For example, these 2 machines down here, they're actually gaming machines, gaming rigs. So they have the GPUs passed to them and the performance is phenomenal. Okay, never mind. Going back to the subject. We're going to need to create a new machine. Now, for a new machine, we will need an image. So we need an image of an operating system. So I'm going to go ahead and use Kali here, simply because I don't need to actually bother installing a lot of things. And the drivers for my wireless network adapter seem to function rather well. So you go into downloads. and then you download the 64-bit or 32-bit depending on your system, because I sincerely hope that you have listened to the first lecture of the course where I have stated that one of the requirements will be the machine that is capable of virtualization. Okay, so you just go ahead and basically click on ISO minus 64-bit, so save, click OK, and then the download will begin. I don't need to download it because I already have it. I'll basically just download it and wait for the download to finish. Then go into File and click New Virtual Machine. Okay, so it says local install media, ISO image or CD-ROM. Okay, that's fine. Use the ISO image, so just go ahead and click on Browse. Now you're not going to have downloads here, so this is something that you are not going to have, and you're definitely not going to have TMP. You're just going to have the default. So in the default, you're not going to find anything of use to you at the moment. So you will need to actually add a pool. So just click here and downloads. So just add a pool. The name here is arbitrary. Name it with however you like. It's the file system directory, so forward. And now you need to select the target path. The target path will obviously be downloads. You have to go back because we're in root at the moment. So you have to go into home, your current user, and then downloads, and then just go ahead and click and open. So home, chronic, that's the user, and then downloads. Just go ahead and click on finish. And there you go. It's called downloads, and you have everything that you have in the downloads folder here. So let's go ahead and select our image that we have downloaded from the net. As you can see, I've actually downloaded several times. I really don't know why. Choose volume, forward, and assign some amount of RAM. The machine will be functional with the default specs like a gigabyte of RAM and a single CPU core, but I'm gonna go ahead and allot 8 to it. You do not need to allot 8. You do not need to allot 8 gigs of RAM to the machine. You can allot 2 gigs, it should run just fine. And you can allot 2 cores, it should run just fine. Again, I'm just gonna allot 4 because at the moment, even though I have a lot of things running, none of them are CPU intensive. They're just occupying a lot of RAM, I think. Let me just go ahead and check that desktop. Okay, not even a lot of RAM. Actually, these are just terminal windows that are open and things that are running in the terminal window. So I have resources to spare, and therewith I am going to give those resources to spare to have the machine run a little bit smoother. But as I said, you can get away with 2 CPUs and with maybe two, maybe 4 gigs of RAM. I do not think that you will need 4 gigs of RAM. So just go ahead and click on forward here. The disk space is something that is very sensitive, so you will need to basically allot sufficient disk space. So I'm going to go ahead and say 40 gigs. That should do it. It should. I'm sincerely hoping that it will. So I'm just going to say 40 gigs. Pretty sure that you can get away with 30 as well. I'm just going to go ahead and click on forward. This one will be named Honey Pot Kali 2.0. This will basically be the machine that we will use as the honeypot. And go ahead and click on Customize Configuration before install and click Finish. Now I will add the USB device, the USB wireless adapter that I have plugged into my machine before I began the installation. But if you plug it in now, it's not a big deal. Just go ahead and click on Add Hardware. You go into the USB. Oh, by the way, in the PCI host devices, you can actually add GPUs, which is very nice. So you go into the USB host device, and my neighbor is drilling something again, which is amazing. You go into the USB device, and you find your wireless USB adapter. So you can you can run the LS USB in the terminal and have a look around first. LS USB. But I mean, you will find it. It's not a difficult thing to find. It says like WLAN adapter. I mean, it's not like you have 100 WLAN adapters. You have one that's plugged in. So I'm going to go ahead and select it. And you can see it's 802.11n. So it's definitely a wireless thing. And okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select that and click on finish. This device is already in use by the other guest for 22. Would you? Yes, I would. So you're not going to get this. It doesn't matter. You can pass one device to multiple machines as long as those multiple machines don't run at the same time. And then you go ahead and click on begin installation. It's allocating and the installation is beginning here. Don't worry, we will have the full screen capabilities. You won't need to install any of the nonsense that VirtualBox and the VMware require. That's such a stupid thing to do. I mean, it makes the process so much more complex. So just go ahead and select install and press enter. I'm sorry if you can hear the drilling. The guy just has no empathy for my work at all. So go ahead and select your language preferences. I'm going to go ahead and select English. So I'm going to go ahead and select United Kingdom because of the keyboard layout. You can select whatever you want. It really doesn't matter at all. The installation will take some time, hopefully not too long, but it's a fairly quick setup. I mean, there isn't that much that you need to do here. It's very simple. Dun, 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 dun. It's going. This may take some time. Oh, wow, okay. So it's probably going to take a little bit longer for you because this is being done on a PCI disk, so PCI SSD disk. Select your host name. My host name will be my domain 01. Go ahead and continue. So just select your host name. You can change your host name later on. It's not a big deal. Type in the root password. Type in something that you will remember. Since this is I always advocate really strong passwords, but since this is a virtual machine, perhaps an extreme degree of caution is not necessary. I myself am just going to go ahead and type in test. I would recommend that you type in something better in there. Why am I typing in test? Because this machine is going to get destroyed upon the completion of this tutorial, so of this chapter or something like that anyway. But it's a short-term machine. It's not gonna be there forever or something like that. The server virtual machines that I have running, they are much more secure in terms of password strengths. So just guide it, use the entire disk in terms of partitioning, select the one that you have available. You cannot from this point on delete. I don't think that there is a way anyway to actually affect the rest of the file system of your host system because you have allotted 40 gigs and those 40 gigs are gonna be taken and that's it. You cannot touch anything else. So all files in one partition. Recommended. I don't really care. Finish partitioning and write changes to disk. Yes. And let it fly. So just let it go. I'm running a little bit short in terms of time, so I'm gonna interrupt the recording here, and then I'll be back a bit later when this is like moved on.